blind, for whether is greater the gift or the altar that sanctifieth the gift. Whoso therefore shall swear by the altar sweareth by it, and by all things thereon. And whoso shall swear by the temple sweareth by it, and by him that dwelleth therein. And he that shall swear by heaven sweareth by the throne of God, and by him that sits thereon. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for your tithe of mint and ye fools and blind, for all right. Good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Some mild technical issues. Anyways, so we're continuing today in the Gospel of John. We're going to do chapter 7. We're going to read it anyways, and then we're going to see how far we get. So let's start with that right away. John 7, verse 1. After these things, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry, because the Jews sought to kill him. Now, the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. His brethren therefore said unto him, Depart hence, and go into Judea, that thy disciples also may see the works that thou doest. For there is no man that doeth anything in secret, and he himself seeketh to be known openly. If thou do these things, show thyself to the world. For neither did his brethren believe in him. Then Jesus said unto them, My time is not yet come, but your time is alway ready. The world cannot hate you, but me it hateth, because I testify of it, that the works thereof are evil. Go ye up unto this feast. I go not up yet unto this feast, for my time is not yet full come. When he had said these words unto them, he abode still in Galilee. But when his brethren were gone up, then went he also up unto the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret. Then the Jews sought him at the feast, and said, Where is he? And there was much murmuring among the people concerning him, for some said, He is a good man. Others said, Nay, but he deceiveth the people. Howbeit no man spoke openly of him for fear of the Jews. Now about the midst of the feast, Jesus went up into the temple and taught. And the Jews marveled, saying, How knoweth this man letters, having never learned? Jesus answered them and said, My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God, or whether I speak of myself. He that speaketh of himself seeketh his own glory. But he that seeketh his glory that sent him, the same is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Did not Moses give you the law, and yet none of you keepeth the law? Why go ye about to kill me? The people answered and said, Thou hast a devil. Who goeth about to kill thee? Jesus answered and said unto them, I have done one work, and ye all marvel. Moses therefore gave unto you circumcision, not because it is of Moses, but of the fathers, meaning a plural, well, no capital, right? And ye on the Sabbath day circumcise a man. If a man on the Sabbath day receives circumcision, that the law of Moses should not be broken, are ye angry at me because I have made a man every whit whole on the Sabbath day? Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Then said some of them of Jerusalem, Is not this he whom they seek to kill? It's just funny because, this is they were trying to. They were like, well, no one's trying to kill you, and then there are other people like, isn't this the one they were trying to kill? But lo, he speaketh boldly, and they say nothing unto him. Do the rulers know indeed that this is the very Christ? Howbeit we know this man whence he is, but when Christ cometh, no man knoweth whence he is. Then cried Jesus in the temple as he taught, saying, "You both know me of myself, but he that sent me is true, whom you know not. But I know him, for I am from him, and he hath sent me." Then they sought to take him, but no man laid hands on him, because his hour was not yet come. And many of the people believed on him and said, "When Christ cometh, will he do more miracles than these which this man hath done?" The Pharisees heard that the people murmured such things concerning him, and the Pharisees and the chief priests sent officers to take him. Then said Jesus unto them, Yet a little while am I with you, and then I go unto him that sent me. Ye shall seek me, and shall not find me, and where I am, thither ye cannot come. Then said the Jews among themselves, Whither will he go? That we shall not find him. Will he go up? Will he go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles, and teach the Gentiles? That'd be later for the apostles. What manner of saying is this that he said, Ye shall seek me and shall not find me, and where I am, thither ye cannot come? In the last day, that great day of the feast, Jesus stood and cried, saying, If any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. He that believeth on me, as the scripture hath said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. But this spake he of the Spirit, which they that believe on him should receive. For the Holy Ghost was not yet given, because that Jesus was not yet glorified. Many of the people, therefore, when they heard this saying, said, Of a truth this is the prophet. Others said, This is the Christ. But some said, Shall Christ come out of Galilee? Hath not the scripture said that Christ cometh of the seed of David, and out of the town of Bethlehem, where David was? So there was a division among the people because of him. And some of them would have taken him, but no man laid hands on him. Then came the officers to the chief priests and Pharisees, and they said unto them, Why have ye not brought him? The officers answered, Never a man spake like this man. Then answered them the Pharisees, Are ye also deceived? Have any of the rulers of the Pharisees believed on him? But this people who knoweth not the law are cursed. Nicodemus saith unto them, he that came to Jesus by night, being one of them, Doth our law judge a man before it hear him, and know what he doeth? They answered and said unto him, Art thou also of Galilee? Search and look, for out of Galilee ariseth no prophet. And every man went unto his own house. So, this is the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, that's the fall festival. You'll remember it was near the Passover. And you know, I haven't been doing it constantly, but like I said, I did a paper on this. In fact, I don't even remember where it is on my website. It's not exactly on the studies page, actually. I think you find it. It's actually, I don't know if it's on study or it's on doctrine. I think it's actually on the doctrine page. Because I had a, well, I'm going to mute here for a second so I can make a disgusting noise. There we go. That was a comment someone left. Disgusting noises, ill-prepared. I at least got rid of the disgusting noises. So, yeah, it's somewhere on the doctrine page. It's somewhere on the doctrine page. Okay. I haven't looked at my doctrine page in a long time. I better check that over, right? See if I want to give it a little more of a... Actually, I think it's kind of like hidden somewhere on my site. I never wanted to put... Whatever, it was Time and John. You might even be able to Google it on my website. I don't know. But anyway, so I haven't been mentioning it constantly, but it's worth pointing out. After these things, right? And then the fact that the Tabernacles is at hand. And then he actually goes, there's a definite progression of time. We've already seen one Passover. And there's going to be more than one Passover. And then some other mysterious feasts, we're not sure which ones. So, meaning it does, a feast of the Jews was at hand, you know. So there are certain markers of time I will point out. Because John is the gospel that from which we derive the idea that Jesus had a ministry of so much time. Because the other gospels really give no indication of time, that much at all. I mean, you know, you notice And like I said, in the Gospel of John, the focus is on Christ and who he is. And also really what it means to believe in him. Because people will read John 3:16 and like, oh, but look at all the people who believe in him. But he doesn't count that. They believe in the miracles. They believe in the full belly. And there's something, they think he's something. They know he's something, but they won't receive and believe the fullness of what he is. That's important for us to do. We got to receive the fullness of what Christ is, of who he is. Because you can see that when he talks about faith, it's something more than just a set of facts about him. We have to commit ourselves to him. You know what I mean? So he commits him, because he has committed himself to us by giving us the ability to believe, to truly believe. I said, I look at the things that happen, like my works, as the signs that, like, I can observe my faith. Like James says, by my works, I can see I have a lot of faith because I do a lot of things that don't really give me anything except a close, meaning they bring me closer to God, but they do not bring me things like riches and wealth. What's the motivation? What's the motivation? I've done almost 1,000 studies. We're up to 889, right? Over the past couple of years, and it's not like I'm getting revenue from this or running a give send go, like, oh, support my ministry and all that stuff. No, none of that, because, and I can and for me, I see my faith. I don't expect you guys to be impressed. People do all kinds of things and they lie. I could just sit here and lie. Oh yeah. I don't know why. I'm being funded by something, right? The devil, or that's what my enemies would say. Okay. So his family, his brethren, just his family, close people that are close to him. Go to Judea, they say, that thy disciples may also see the works that thou doest. Because there are some people who follow him who are from Judea. I suppose that's what the indication is. That's what it sounds like to me. Judea being the land of Judah. And for there is no man that doeth anything in secret, and he himself seeketh to be known openly. If you do these things, show thyself to the world. That weird phrase. Let's just look at another translation. The turn of phrase in this chapter, there are a couple of times when I'm just like, I'd like to see, I almost want to go to the New Living I had hovered my mouse over the New Living Translation. Let's just look at the Devil's Own Translation, the New International Version. I'm just kidding. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you're doing these things, show yourselves. Okay. I liked where they put that, even as modern English as that is. Those who would like to be a public figure, but someone who wants to be known openly, you can't do things in secret. That's pretty logical. I always am very skeptical of what people say to Jesus. Is this true? So this is not untrue. It's a very logical thing. Like, if you want to be known, if you seek to be known, you can't do things in secret. True enough. Show yourself to the world. If you're doing things, then show everybody. But they didn't believe in him. Again, they seem to believe some things. Like, okay, he's, there's something about him, but they don't believe in him as truly the Son of God, the Christ, the way Peter, indicated. My time is not yet come, but your time is always ready. I don't like that phrase either. Let's just see what the modern. I'm not worried about the NIV here at all. My time is not yet here. For you, any time will do. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I meant, like, not any time. What people, it's like we're all like now. That's why I grew up in a world where everyone believed we were, not everyone, but it seemed like the whole world of Christians on TV all believed we were living in the end times, of the prophecies and all that. And now I knew people who didn't, but I'm just saying, in a certain set of thought, like when you're interested in prophecy as a Christian and you're looking around, it's like, it seems like everybody thinks we're in the end times. Or would like it to be the end times, right? Everyone wants that day to be here. They want the excitement. I remember when I was young, there was nothing I wanted more than to live through the tribulation As stupid as that sounds, and I do believe it sounds stupid. It sounds stupid to me at 48. At 18, it didn't. Because what does an 18-year-old really know about life? And what does an 18-year-old really know about about suffering and also the things that will happen in the end? You know, it's going to be a very dark period of history before the Lord comes. The darkest period that the world has ever known. Except perhaps the days of Noah, you know. So, I mean, you know, that's the level. In fact, since the days of Noah, exactly since the days of Noah, the world has never seen anything like it. So, you know, that's we humans, we want now. You know, like it reminds me of the Spirit when the apostles, there were disciples at that time, I forgot, but Peter and they were at, you know, Lord, wilt thou have us call down fire on the cities that had not received him? You know not what spirit you are of. You know, they want it all right now. They want a sign right now. They want a sign that proves it right now. The Lord's way of not announcing, you know, like he said, I come in the name of my Father. He's obviously declaring himself in many ways, but only to us because we know this. It's like his very, cryptic way of talking in the Gospel of John it is focused on that relationship between himself and the Father. That is a strong theme in John. You notice it's very clear. Whereas in the other Gospels, again, it is much more focused on a lot of the doctrine, the parables, in many ways. I mean, because the Gospel of John is very unique. It is unique, right, among the Gospels. That's why they call the other three the Synoptic Gospels, because there's something, they have a similar thing. And also they're kind of like a synopsis. I think that may be, because this does not feel like a synopsis. It's a little different. If that's what it comes from. I just made that up, by the way. So I just assuming based on the words similarity. Okay, because synonym means same, maybe it looks the same, seems the same. Synoptic. I don't know if OP, that's probably not. It's probably not the word that means to see. Yes, I don't know. I'd have to look into it. So he boats still in Galilee. Okay, yeah, my time has not yet come. I do not. I skipped it a little bit. Yeah, because I want to say that. You know, the world is always right now, right here. That's the way we live. We live right now in the moment. You know, the past is like gone. We remember some things, right? But the future is so unclear. So the patience that it takes to just, you know, to wait for God. We don't always have. People want everything. You know, I remember when I wanted to I want to get the Holy Spirit when I was a teenager. I prayed, no response. I was a young man in my 20s, no response. A couple of times in my 20s, right? I asked a few times. You know, you think I would have asked 1,000 times a day? I should have, because that's how important it is to receive God's Spirit. You know, and you say, "Well, Paul, do you believe? Didn't you just have His Spirit?" I'll tell you what, I felt like I needed something more. Because my faith was not what it is. I know that. You know, just like Thomas, you know, it does something to you when you have to stick your fingers in the wound. Show me something, and then I'll believe. You know, the Lord is merciful. He knows our frame. He knows our weaknesses. He knows just what it's going to take to put our hearts right with Him also. So He opens our eyes to the truth and gives us faith. And sometimes He shows us a hint of His power, the healing, or like I said, when I felt the power of God come on me, and I spake with other tongues. The world, he said, I'm going to keep jumping around. Okay. The world cannot hate you, but me it hateth, because I testify of it, that the works thereof are evil. When we're part of the world, you know, when we're fitting into the world, you know, I fit into the world all the time. Maybe not in my study. I know, but hardly anybody listens, right? But when I walk through Walmart, there's no hatred for me. Not that I'm aware of. Right? Though actually, past 2 years, actually, there has been a lot of hatred in my direction, I think. I could feel it sometimes. A lot of dirty looks, I gotta say. Been looking at a lot of dirty looks, so. But again, why? Well, and because to me, I believe I'm doing things because of Christ. Because men ought not to be muzzled like cattle. Muzzled like dogs. I'm not sure if they're muzzled cattle, but. And I don't, I like the Amish approach. Confront the disease. Yeah, we could protect the weak, but I am not interested in going along with that. They make the moral decisions for us. But when we are not, that's because, when we are not being salt, like Jesus said, be salt in the earth. Something distinctive, right? Salt is very distinctive. The flavor of salt. Saltiness. It's a very distinct flavor. And we ought to be very distinct. Like I said, a peculiar people. When we're not that, many times in my life, I have not maybe when I could have spoken out or should have spoken out, I didn't always speak up. I can't think recent example, and I tend to try to forget those moments when I feel like I fell short of of living up to my Christian ideal, which is to speak, to when the opportunity comes to speak, to make sure I do, to testify of the world and the evil works thereof. The world's works are evil, And what are those evil works? Like I was talking about last week, I go to a church function where we're supposed to be, we're having a potluck and we're hanging around, right? This is the God's holy day. I'm in a church that is an Adventist church, so they're very they're known for their very zealous Christianity, supposedly. They're very zealous they're very legalistic is what it is. They have a zeal for righteousness, which is not bad. But as I'm playing the Lord's words, from, I forgot, I don't even remember what song I was singing. It was I think it was John 15 probably. And as I'm singing, I can hear people talking about their mud flaps and all this other carnal stuff, their vacations. I remember this guy told me, I was talking to him in my driveway, he's like, yeah, I don't like much hanging around with those church folks at that particular church because all the talks about retirement accounts and vacations, that stuff, those are the things that will seduce people away from Christ. One to his vacation home and another to his merchandise. They all are caught up in worldly things. And it's like we all have some obviously interaction with the world because we have to survive, right? But often we get swallowed up in it, and we're not just surviving anymore. We're trying to make it our whole life, and we're putting, like they put all their effort into that storing up. Even talks about the guy building the big barns, man. Well, I got to store all my grain so I'll be totally secure. The Lord is, where are all my talents? Well, I left them buried in the earth. And when we live like that, the world may despise you for being a half-baked Christian, but it won't hate you, Hate is much too strong. The world can't hate you if you're like the world. The world doesn't hate its own, But he testifieth, because, I testify of it, that the works thereof are evil. And that's one of the things. It's like, notice he says testify. That means bear witness. Martyrion, almost certainly. I'm not going to look it up. Right? It means to bear witness to things, like to give testimony, right? that's one of the things that I don't judge. When I talk about judgment, like if I talk about something being evil in the world, like a fornication is wrong. Let's say I'm in a church and there's like, and this often happens, there's like a young couple living together and they're in church. And it's like, oh, it's okay. And honestly, I don't rebuke it every time, but fornication is wrong. It's sin. You know? It's real sin. Without our dogs and sorcerers, fornicators, without the holy city, without. And that without thing, that is not a good place you don't want to be outside of that city because there's nothing there for you. All the life that's springing up in everlasting life is in that city, metaphorically speaking. But when you say some people, you start making a big deal about stuff that people have decided isn't important anymore. You feel like talking to a young couple about it, right? It's like, we don't want to, because nobody told them, apparently, that it was wrong. Because parents don't raise their children right. Even Christian parents. What did you do? Or maybe they did, or they tried, or whatever. It's like, no, there should be a very strong. I have no trouble getting my kids to agree to be chaste until they're married. I just tell them that's what they're going to do. In a way that, I don't know, and then facilitate, I don't know, I guess there's a lot of soft touch that I don't explain sometimes. I don't know. Because like I said, I don't ask a whole ton of them, just a few things. Because the most important, you have to go after the things that are most important. Judgment, mercy, faith. That's what Jesus listed. When you strain it, you've neglected the weightier matters of the law. Judgment, but judgment, is the judgment of God. If I say to someone, that's wrong to be a fornicator, and they say, don't judge me. I'm not judging it. I'm just testifying of what God has already said. You know what I mean? And that I take Jesus is a model. Certainly, he does model the proper behavior and the proper mentality. His subjection to the Father, if he is subject to the Father, I can therefore know exactly how I should be subject to the Father. Because he's a very obedient son. You know what I mean? And though he also, and it's weird because you start putting yourself on a footing with Christ, right? And that seems wrong. But we're not putting ourselves there. He's raising us to that footing. And so therefore to look at him as the model and say, I want to be like that, that's actually what we're doing, right? It's written everywhere in the New Testament. We want to be like him. And we will be like him. That's the promise. We will it's given to us on behalf of Christ that we may be partakers of the divine nature, it says in 2 Peter chapter 1. He testifies. We listen. And we repeat the testimony. The works thereof are evil. Now we can be hated. We will be hated. If we're hated, it's because of Christ. You know what I mean? I know the world hates people, but the world itself, they that are of the world are not hated by the world. And also, even if you're not of it, if you won't testify, if you don't open your mouth, the world won't hate you either. You just kind of it's not my time yet. You go up. I'm not going up yet. And so he was still in Galilee. When his brethren had gone up, then he went up also, not openly, but in secret. Not to begin with, anyways. And the Jews sought him at the feast. Why do I feel like, Jewry meant Judea. I thought I missed that word. I meant to mention that. It's just a different way to translate it in English. But when his brethren were gone up, he went also to the feast. They sought him, saying, where is he? And there was much murmuring among the people concerning him, for some said, he is a good man. Others said, nay, but he deceiveth the people. Again, because they say the good works, but they disagree with the things he's saying. And so because they disagree with what he says, it doesn't matter what kind of miracle. He showed them one sign. A man was healed, a paralyzed man. Then no one seems to dispute the actual healing. But they say he deceives people. because he's misleading them. He's not teaching them according to our doctrine. And we know our doctrine is true. That's the problem with with entrenched religion, because it's all about what our fathers said. Our fathers said. Well, your fathers aren't here. So who's going to listen and judge now rightly whether this man be of God? You're just going to judge it based on the traditions you've got from your father. Well, you're going to be in trouble, because I've been on my whole life on a journey, and the idea that I could lay down, like the idea that I would codify, I wrote stuff on my website, right? But I'll go back. I've gone back and changed it. In fact, I changed it by adding red letters where I changed it and saying there's the original text. And plus, they have the Internet Wayback Machine. You can never really get rid of anything you do. Every idle word, according to the Lord, will men give account in the judgment. So then in the middle of the feast, so they have this disagreement about him. Some say he's a good man. But again, they're trying to make an argument, like when they say that he's a good man, but it's not saying he is the Son of God. No, they say, well, he's good. They're trying to persuade, but you can't persuade when there's no faith. When the eyes are shut, when the ears are closed. And I've seen that just in regular human behavior. Like I said, it was like trying to talk to people about the dangers of certain medical interventions, or over the past couple of years. I don't want to talk specifically. I don't want to get another strike. All those, like if in a period of time there were all these excess deaths, there's one thing it certainly couldn't be, according to the authorities. It couldn't be our interventions, because people will be willfully blinded in what is being actively used as the blindfold is the religious authority. That's the thing. It's like that entrenched religious authority. It was poisonous for the Jews, and it's poisonous for Christianity also. The entrenched religious authorities. Look at the Catholic Church. What a mess. The priesthood has been infiltrated with all kinds of sexual perverts and people who do not genuinely believe in Christ. They're going to. That's that situation. And many of the other churches have to have if you're a Lutheran, well, you better be Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, because they're the only ones who are really still. I'm not. But whatever. I know from their opinion, right? I always remember because my friend, showed me this one guy who was into that, and he was very much, that is the ultimate expression of the church. But all it was just keep splintering off from bad church to bad church as the doctrine got corrupted, and that corruption got entrenched in the structure of the church, in the structure of what they believed. And so then every minister marching in lockstep, or he can leave the denomination and lose all the support they may get from that, or and they may not even be, if he thinks differently, well, his congregation, maybe they just don't care. They just want to keep it the way it's been, so he can just hit the road. And a lot of people don't have the kind of integrity that it takes to just say, okay, then I'm gone. Because it's like they've got to keep that job. Wouldn't want to lose that job for the sake of speaking the truth. God forbid. Because then what would happen to your retirement plan? Then what would happen to your vacation plans? No more vacations. Oh no. No more big nest egg for my final days. Your final day is tomorrow. Then what's going to happen to all your nest egg? What is the Lord going to say? Wow, look what you did with your talents. You left them in a pile. That's why I don't take donations. I don't want. No. That's too easy. Don't give me your burdens. Take them on yourself. Figure out what you're supposed to do. Because I'll tell you what, I've had a lot of pain in my life, and I don't, I've been through it all, and I've seen, I know what financial insecurity is like, and I'm used to walking on the rough seas. So what? I don't have a lot of. Sorry. Yeah, think about it. Lay awake at night. Wonder what you should do with what you do. It's like, I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to be too hard on people, but there's a certain level of that mentality that's like not right. It's not right. People know it's not right. I meet people who are like, yeah, I just don't. It's like, especially when you're consumed by it. You do plan for the future. I do. I'm building. I'm working things, but do not neglect the Lord's work. Do not neglect the faith that is in you. Don't let it be that you buried it in the earth and you're too busy. Because that's what happens. People get too busy with the affairs of this life to really nurture that relationship they have with Christ. And that's the first thing you got to do is like, don't run off and just throw your money at something. That's not wise either. But having the mind to know that it's like, hey, I'm ready to let go of everything for the Lord's sake. If that's genuine in you, you don't have to be in a rush. Your last day isn't literally tomorrow, but that's what happened in the parable. That's why I said it. Thou fool, tonight your soul is required of you. And all you laid up for yourself, it's not going to sustain you because you're not going to be here for it. It's going to be given to someone else, and maybe they'll do some good with it. I'm glad I don't have a lot of money because I've thought about it many times. I don't know, I would waste a lot of it on myself. Probably. I don't know. There's things I'd like to have and do and make. I would, if I had too much money, it's probably what would happen. I don't know. It's a challenge I've never had to deal with, I've said many times, I'd like to deal with that challenge. Like, I don't know. I've had a lot of challenges, and I long for the kingdom of God when I can see and fully understand, and so I can be at peace. The peace that God gives is good, but like my heart is, always troubled because I haven't learned right. That's what I think. I haven't learned right because I'm still like I said, when it comes to a lot of things, like, I can walk on the uncertain waters of financial instability, but there are other things that I'm not so easily enduring, Sometimes patience, depends on the situation, is not always easy to come by, right? Among other things, No man spoke openly of Jesus. They want to talk about him openly, lest they get on the bad side of the authorities. Again, there's a very unhealthy social environment being described there. And about the midst of the feast, Jesus went up to the temple. So about the middle of the feast, because Tabernacles takes place over the course of several days. I think it's actually a whole week. 7 days, 7 trumpets or something like that. Because the Feast of Trumpets and Tabernacles also includes trumpets, does it not? I thought there was a connection to the Feast of Tabernacles with the sounding of the trumpets. I forget. Anyways, but that is significant, and I wish I had a better understanding of that because I would incorporate that into this scene. Like understanding a little more about that feast would help the study, I think, right? But it is this second major feast. I know that Passover I know all about. Tabernacles means tents, by the way, the Feast of Tents, because I know it's because they dwelt in tents in the wilderness. It's to remember that. About the midst of the feast, Jesus went up to the temple and taught. And the Jews marveled, saying, how knoweth this man letters, having never learned? They were marveled that he spoke, so eloquently, I suppose, like an educated man. And also, there are places where he's reading in the synagogue, and it's not a big deal. I don't think it's so much the fact that he could read here, but it was the depth of his knowledge. Because he talks more about his doctrine than about, So he's making probably sophisticated statements of doctrine and stuff as he teaches. And we see a lot of the teaching of Christ in the other Gospels. Like I said, he could have talked about a lot of things you see in the Sermon on the Mount or whatever. Then John focuses on, though, the interaction with the people, with the enemies who despise him. Jesus answered them. When it says Jews, because remember, it's Judea. I remember Arnold Murray used to make a point of this, but it's true. A resident of the land of Judea is, by implication, a Jew. Like that is part of what made, it does not always indicate like all the Jews, because they are dispersed, as they mention. They're not really talking about the dispersed from Assyria. That was centuries before. Those would not be known to them, but they were dispersed already. Like that's why Paul was Paul of Tarsus, which is it is a Gentile city, not Paul of Bethlehem, because a lot of the Jews were spread throughout the Roman Empire. And that was a process that began during the period when they were dominated by the Greeks. After Alexander the Great swept through the Persian Empire, the kingdom of Israel was actually under the protection of the Persians. And then, and so when the Greeks came, it began this process of, well, they unlike the Persians who respected the Jews' religion, the Greeks did not, and they wanted to make them more Greek. Antiochus Epiphanes and all that, that was the guy that slaughtered the pig on the altar and basically defiling it, and they were trying to make but some Jews went along with it and became Hellenized. Just like we have a lot of secular Jews in our modern day that are not particularly religious. They're not wearing yarmulkes all over the place. They are just living their lives as part of the society that surround them. And there were Jews like that too. And I know I'm getting a little ahead of the text, but that's okay. My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. We model that also. It's like, my doctrine needs to be shaped. See, I have my doctrine. That's true. I believe my doctrine comes from God, of course, because I got it out of the Bible. But I also received it from the hands of men. A lot of it we are preconditioned from our youth to believe in. Just the way our parents or whoever around us talk about, depending on what they think the actual way things are is. It led to me, like when I was a teenager, looking in the book of Revelation and becoming very confused. Because when I read in the book of Revelation about the first and second resurrection and the white throne judgment, it just didn't jive at all with what I had been basically told and was culturally understood by most people. It was just in the air around me. People believe that when you die, you immediately are transported to heaven or hell. I remember thinking that I thought that's what it was. You die and you stand before God, and then he either sends you to heaven or he sends you to hell. And though that is exactly how it happens, well, that is exactly what happens. It doesn't happen, but what was confused me in Revelation, because Revelation said it happened all at the end of the world. And I thought, how can there be a judgment at the end of the world? What about the judgment that happens after you die? Like do they just bring everyone out of hell again? It said death and hell delivered up the dead which were in it. But it also had the sea delivering up the dead, which is confusing if you believe what I believed. And many of you may still believe that, and I'm not going to make this a point of dispute, but the point is, I had to be willing to amend my beliefs in one direction or the other. I either had to run into an amillennialist or something who could tell me, no, don't pay attention to Revelation 20. It's all symbolic of what, I would like to know, but like 1,000 year is symbolic of the separation between the righteous and the wicked, right? That's one interpretation that just springs into my brain. I don't like it much because I think that Revelation there is being far too, it just is a passage that seems like it's actually rather concrete in its pronouncements. It is detailing events that have been promised for a very long time, that God would judge the world. But throughout my, like I said, I used to, when I was young, I believed in the Trinity. I didn't know what it was, though. I just believed in the Word because I was told God was a Trinity, so I believed it. Later on, people challenged that belief, and so I became hostile to the idea. Even though my beliefs were actually pretty close to the Trinity, actually. It was just, I had a few kind of weird ideas and those were mostly mine, actually. But the weird ideas that had to be corrected was something that I found. And I think that's part of it. It's like people often go to the Bible, they want to find something. You know what I mean? We're looking for what we want to see instead of going there to just find what God will show us. And to just, to be patient and content and let the understanding come as God would give it. Because it doesn't always come at once. My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. I want my doctrine to be the doctrine that God has. Now, I don't know how to confirm that. Jesus could know. He could know. Well, I do know how to confirm it. I confirm it by means of the Spirit. I look to the Spirit. But the ability of, but my willingness to hear the truth, though, is going to be somewhat affected in that. Because, like, sometimes we don't want, like, there are certain, like I could say, I don't want to think Jesus isn't God, right? Maybe I don't want to believe that he isn't, something untrue. That's also true. Like, but I have to look at it fairly. I have to try to put away my desires. I have to try. I have to try to separate myself from what I want and just receive from God what he wants. It's not so easy because we often have prejudicial things in our minds that prevent us from hearing things because I don't want to hear that. I see people, they still to this day, they don't really, like, a lot of people still believe that what we did was necessary in the pandemic. Like, that was all necessary. They don't realize how much damage was done yet because the bill hasn't really come fully due, unfortunately. It's going to be very rough. But don't think for a second that the end times won't be a lot rougher. Not about myself, but I talk from my own understanding. That's how I felt when this one guy was talking about the Godhead. And I forgot his name, and someone asked me, "What do you think of this guy?" And I'm like, "I don't like it," because he's making his own doctrine. He's just making up his own stuff. Not that you just have to go with what has been, but you should look. Much of what we believe, the standard doctrine, is all just fine. That's why I don't feel this. I feel with most Christians, at least in the basic beliefs we have, that we are all very united. As I said, the church is still united. It's just these earthly divisions. The spiritual church is united through the Spirit of God, and it's always one. I always affirm that the church is one because it's the body of Christ. Christ does not have many bodies, many members, but one body. Now, people like to think of that in the local church level, and you can think of it, when you're, whether two or more are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. And so we can model the body of Christ by being in any number of believers, but there is also the overarching, the church writ large, which is indeed a purely spiritual organism. It is united by the Spirit of God. It is not subject to the doctrine or limitations of an earthly authority or church. Like that's a structural church. A structured, carnal, earthly structure. All right. He that speaketh of himself seeks his own glory. But he that seeketh his glory that sent him, the same is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. He's speaking of himself. But, when we model that behavior, there's also, that is a path for us towards righteousness. Because when we stop seeking things for ourselves, because sin is often when one is tempted, and you may not be seeking your own glory, but you're seeking your own. You're seeking your own will, and so by yielding ourselves to God's will, we will have. That's where there's no one. That's the place of righteousness, when we're completely obedient to God's will. That's easier said than done, but it is the goal. We should never lose sight of that. You always want to have the right goals. It's important. You always want to set your goal as high as possible, because though you may fall short of that goal, what if you set it half as high? And you could have made it, to 90%, but instead, since you set your goal at 50%, you only made 45, And so, high goals, high standards. This is the high calling of Christ. And that we should be seeking that God should be glorified. Did not Moses give you the law, and yet none of you keepeth the law? And he throws in, why goeth you about to kill me? It seems like a little bit of a non sequitur there, right? It doesn't exactly follow. But he's just cutting to the chase. It's because of things like this. Because he says I seek the glory of him that sent me. And they know what he means by that. He means that God sent him. He's sent by God. He's not saying I'm the Christ, but he's saying God sent me, because that's the truth. He doesn't even, he says it in the third person. If you do God's will, you'll know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether he speaks of himself. But like I said, this is sort of general, because the substance of it is he's referring back to chapter 4. He says that later, right? Because that's why they sought to kill him, was because he did that one sign they saw, where he healed the man who was paralyzed, right? And they were angry about it. That's why they seek to kill him, but to him this doesn't make sense. I'm just telling the truth. I healed someone on the Sabbath that you say I shouldn't. I told the guy to carry his bed. You know why? Because it was showing, hey, he's been healed. He's been laying on that bed for years, and now you're going to be like, oh, today? The Sabbath, as Jesus said, was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The Jews had taken it too far. They didn't understand the real meaning. Yes, God was very strict about the Sabbath in the time of the Exodus. Yes. But you guys don't keep the law. But I see the difference. For them, it's like it's not just because he broke the Sabbath, because he was teaching people to break it in their minds. He was saying to do it to people. And so he was deceiving people. He was undermining their authority also. That's how they justified in their mind that he's deceiving the people. None of you keepeth the law. No one can keep the law perfectly. That was one of the lessons of the Old Testament, that the Jews couldn't keep the law. They try to keep the law. They tried in the Pharisees and all that. But Christ says they do not keep it in a way that pleases God. And because also when he came, not only did he lighten up on the Sabbath, he cranked down on the adultery and murder and all that stuff. He really buckled down on it. Adultery is like, if you've looked on a woman with lust in your heart, you're already committing adultery with her in your heart. Now, not that the two are equivalent, but they're categorically the same. They're the same category. Same category of sin. Still falling short. Looking after a woman to lust after her is a sin that is on the continuum that rises to the level of adultery. And along that continuum is also fornication. A little sidetrack though, right? Because it's a little different. But nevertheless, because it's like, well, what if I'm looking at her and she's not married and I'm not married? Is that adultery? That's fornication of the eyes, essentially. It's not, like I said, not as severe as actually doing the deed, but nevertheless, same category. So the standards that Jesus thinks as far as keeping the law are actually much higher than the Jews would allow, except he lightens up on precisely the things that they have clamped down the hardest on. Because here's the thing, it's easy to look around and say, okay, everyone's wearing the right kind of clothing. Everyone's got their tassel on. Everyone's got their phylacteries on. Everyone's got their proper attire to demonstrate to the world that they're Jews. Everyone's resting on the Sabbath day. We can look around and make sure no one's doing work. All these external commandments. We can make sure they tithe the mint and the anise and the cumin. We can keep all these things. It's the easiest part. Well, they had made it into this huge burden for people. Easy in the sense, it's not that it's easy per se, it's not that hard, but it burdens people thinking this is what God is all about. God's all about, you being obedient to somewhat arbitrary commandments, like the kind of clothes you wear, the kind of food you eat. Because I was, the pork thing and all that, right? The kosher meats. All that stuff, the externalities. It's easy to be in church on that. It wasn't a Sunday, it was a Saturday, actually, because like I said, it's easy to be there on Saturday. It's not so easy to, in your heart, be in the presence of God at any time. But certainly, it shouldn't be that hard when the words of Christ are being sung to you on God's holy day, in God's supposedly holy place, the church. It's supposed to be, at least when we're gathered there, it ought to be holy, right? So they have all these carnal commandments they keep. And Jesus is going after that stuff as far as saying that's not so important. And the thing with the Gentiles, too, that's another thing. It was easy to say, all right, we're totally separate from the Gentiles. And it's easy to let that turn into despising the Gentiles. Like they didn't like those words. Because that was a much hard... Now they couldn't look at themselves as righteous anymore if they believed his words. If they believed the words of Jesus, they would then suddenly be left looking to God for mercy and pleading for God's mercy, as opposed to thinking like, I do everything right. I'm just... The Lord must be so pleased with me. I have the biggest phylacteries. You know, those little boxes they put on their heads, right? The funny thing is, like, well, whatever. I'm not going to get into phylacteries. Nothing wrong with phylacteries. They're part of the law. But the point was, they'd used it, you know, and they make wide the borders of their garments. The garments were supposed to have fringes on it. You know, this is something Jesus said in Matthew 23. They do these things. They make a big deal about, they strain at a gnat and they swallow a camel is one of the things he said. They have way too much, they're way too concerned with the minutiae and the details, but not the critical details. Because there's minutiae and detail that is very important. Like I said, it's like the affairs of the heart are very detailed and very small things, but it's like they are the things that govern a lot of times our actions. Like what's going on inside is bursting to get out. You know, out of the heart, Jesus said, you know, nothing goes into a man to defile him when he's talking about what you eat. It's the things that come out of you that defile him. Defile you, because he's paving the way for the acceptance of the Gentiles into the family of God. And on that basis, because we come through the veil of his flesh, the carnal commandments have passed away, because Christ fulfilled all. I believe that, because if Christ hadn't fulfilled all, he said, not one jot or one tittle of the law will pass away until all be fulfilled. Well, Jesus must have fulfilled all, because there are certain aspects of the law which Christians believe to have passed away, such as for every denomination. I don't even care if you're though I did talk to someone who's Hebrew roots about sacrifices, and they were ambivalent, like maybe we should still keep sacrifices. I was like, no. It's that blind, like, it's my doctrine. You know, they're blinded by their own ideas. Oh, we have to keep the law still. So as soon as I start bringing up things, because he didn't want to say it was a sin not to keep the Sabbath, I'm like, well, if it isn't, then why do it? But eventually admitted, okay, it is a sin. And a sin that makes my soul in mortal danger, right? Because if my soul is in mortal danger, why do I care? You know, that's why the Catholics had mortal sin. They wanted you to know, these are the ones you shall not do. It's mortal. It can result in the loss of your soul. That's what they say. So they answer, you have a devil. You're possessed of a devil. You know, later on, Jesus had things to say about that, like, you know, you can blaspheme me all you like, but you shouldn't blaspheme the Holy Spirit, because that's the Holy Spirit I'm possessed of. He didn't say it like that, but that's the truth. You have a devil. You're demon-possessed. Who's trying to kill you? You know, having a devil is akin to saying someone's crazy, by the way. You're crazy. Who's going to kill you? Because it seems like when people are crazy, they're like possessed of some sort of thing that's leading them into these dark places often. They're confusing and difficult, illogical, you know. Or if they're seeing things, you know, people often think, oh, you know, but the Lord shows us things too. Jesus answered and said unto them, I have done one work and ye all marvel. Oh, so we'll pick it up at verse 21 because we're out of time here. So, because he's going to go back, this, like I say, he's going back to what he had said before about the man who was healed. Not what he had said before so much as this is going back to that affair. That's why he wasn't going to Judea. That's why he'd been up in Galilee for so long. Because they wanted to kill him, and you know it wasn't time yet. It wasn't time for him to die. That's quite frankly why he didn't hang around there, because it wasn't time to die. And you know, though the Lord can protect him, Jesus often had to slip out of their hands and stuff, because you know we also know that in his temptation he was taken to the pinnacle of the temple, and if he threw himself off, he figured he'd probably die, because that would be like tempting God. You don't throw yourself off of high places just to prove a point. It's one, just like walking on the water. It's not like I jump off the ship, but if God calls you onto the water, you walk. You walk. So we'll pick it up verse 21 next time. Oh, thanks for joining me in this study. I look forward to being back again tomorrow, God willing. I lost my mute. All right, here we go.
Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater the gift or the altar, defieth the gift. Whoso therefore shall swear by the altar, sweareth by it, and by all things thereon. And whoso shall swear by the temple, sweareth by it, and by him that dwelleth therein. And he that shall swear by heaven, sweareth by the throne of God, and by him that sits thereon. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for your tithe of mint and ye fools and blind.